Okay, hi everyone. We are here to continue our discussion about historical countries and their rendering in databases and time series for historical shapes, for geographic shapes, and so on. So where should we start?
Maybe in the one with time series for geographical shapes. That's why.
Okay. So do you have a proposal for how to do this?
This is the current status of the time series for polygons in historical country data.
Is this different from what we looked at before?
Not really. Only
Yeah.
that.
The first point that I already made last time, and can we please actually fix it, is don't have the thing to the second. Okay? Put this.
I think that's a time series issue, though.
That they all have to be the same, or what?
No, right now the times, the dates are basically with instant granularity, so we do not support different granularities for the times.
But what do you do if you have different granularities?
Well,
you should at least coerce them.
They're all instantiated to instant right now.
Okay, that's fine. But so what we should do here is you should store them. Okay, this thing here should generate a time series that does not say 1st of January. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? Change that. Fix it. Do not do that.
Well, no, right. But the whole point, okay, we talked about this last time. The whole point is that time series just forgets about all granularity information once it's in the time series.
That's fine, right? But so at least, yeah, okay. But
it's just looking at the min of all the times, and it's an instant, and so it's displaying it as January 1st.
I understand. So, but this is wrong here. I can already tell this is wrong. Oh, I see. You're saying the time series is messing this up.
The time series, that's in the time series. That is a time series object.
Okay, fine. But you're saying that this wouldn't be wrong. If I were to look at this, its dates will be correct. Is that true?
I'm not sure what this is.
Well, the thing I'm highlighting, the entity value.
The entity value is returning the time series.
Okay, Gosha, what's it going to take to fix this?
We're working on, on the new version of the time series. So I hear you with the granularity. So we'll have discussions about that, how to deal with the granular, times in a time steps.
This sounds like a very long-term project. We need something shorter term.
Well, it is kind of tricky a little bit.
So yes.
There could be something easy to do here, which is just to store somewhere the granularity and use it in typesetting. Nothing changes in how time series works, but the typesetting knows that.
So you just so there are two kind of questions: whether you want this in the typesetting or the storage that or in a storage in a way.
We don't care about the storage. For now.
Okay, so for the typesetting, that might be a quicker fix, and it might go with the existing temporal data setup.
Yeah,
because
we need that to happen.
Yes, because the way right now you actually see it, it's already typesetting only day, month, and year, because we know that there are zeros. So
okay.
Okay,
let's just solve it at the level of typesetting for now.
Okay, I will look into, and I will talk to the entity developers to kind of discuss how to let time series know that we want to typeset this just for the year. Okay.
Fine. Fine. If necessary, you can put some option into time series for now. That's a granularity option. Don't we have a granularity option? A named granularity option? What's it called?
Date granularity. It has just been introduced.
Fine. So Gosha could just use that.
Right. Although I doubt you'd want to document it, because it won't, the actual semantics of time series.
No, I understand.
Yes, but it might be a developer option just for the purposes of typesetting.
Right.
Past there.
Okay. All right. Fine. So other than that horror, what are we seeing here? So this is geo area. I mean, this looks like it works nicely. What's there a
Yes,
problem
the
here?
other issue that you pointed out last meeting was the fact that at the end of the time series, there is a missing not available value to signal the time series that there it ends, that there is no
Yes.
more data
So have you solved
after
that?
that date.
Did you solve that?
No, it's also a time series issue. I don't know.
Okay, well, then let's
in-
define it. Gosha, do you know what the issue is?
No, I don't know it. I have to
Okay,
have a
all
look.
right. Okay, so here's the issue. Here's the issue. Every one of these polygons is valid for a particular span of years. Okay?
Mhm.
But time series is not marking. Time series is just giving points where this is the value, this is the value, this is the value. As opposed to the last one of these, which is really a span. This is valid from 1938 BC to whatever it is.
Right.
Or no,
Well,
I think, go ahead.
Well, to phrase it differently, the problem is that the time series considers itself, ended at the last, the last entry in the time series. But really, this time series ends a little bit later, right? Because it's got, interpolation arrow, none or whatever. And so, it basically assumes that between, data point A and data point B, between two times, it just uses, the previous polygon to interpolate. But then for the last polygon, the time series just considers itself over immediately, if that makes sense.
Well, no, Gosha,
Yes.
here's the point. The last data point we have for the shape of Prussia or something is such and such a thing. I don't know the history of Prussia. I know you do, but I don't. But
Okay.
anyway, but the last data point, let's say, is 1908, let's say,
Mhm.
and it has some shape, right?
Mhm.
Prussia ended on some date, right?
Mhm.
But we don't record that. The time series doesn't have. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't. The time
Yes.
series
So basically, what happens if you have the interpolation order 0? It's gonna hold the last value.
Yeah, but
Right,
it doesn't
so-
know until when.
Or
That's the
it's
problem,
so if you
Gosha.
so that's what's going to happen, that if you request the value at the time after this 1908, then it's going to give you the last value that
I
was,
understand
that
that.
was
I
there.
understand that. But the whole point is
that's why we are adding the missing. Exactly.
right. But the whole point is, let's say it ends in 1914. I don't know my history, so I'm sorry. I apologize. But let's say it ends in 1914. Right. So after 1914, there should be nothing. Then it should genuinely be missing. But from 1908 to 1914, you should get the held last value.
Yes.
Right.
But
So if time series, instead of using points and giving a value at a point, gave a value at an interval, then this would work. Because then we would just say, I mean, the correct thing that is in fact what this data is saying is from 1908 to 1914, the shape was this.
But if you query any date in this interval, you're gonna get the previous value, which is the 1908 value.
That's fine.
Well, I think the problem is if you query 1909, it'll actually give it'll complain that extrapolation is being used or something.
Yes, because it has to extrapolate. Because
right,
it's going outside of the duration.
Right, but Gosha and others.
The
The truth of this data is we have polygons for countries for intervals of dates. We know between 2044 BC and 2032 BC, the shape of the city of Ur or whatever it is here was that. See what I'm saying? We know it for an interval.
Well, two things. One, we don't necessarily know it for an interval. There's sometimes I'm sure when it's kind of like, we know it here and we know it there. We don't really know in between, or it may not have been well defined.
Fair point.
The other thing is that is exactly what time series does when there's no interpolation, is it assumes that you sort of have these intervals from one date to the next.
Right, but the problem is outside the range defined in the time series. There is no way to define this started in this date and ended in this date.
Can I ask Gosha a question? Is there a way of just saying a time series has these values inside, but the ends of the time series are this and this, the start and end are this, independent of what the values are? Is that doable?
So not yet, that we discussed it at some point, I remember. So we would like to have a different, we want to interpolate inside the start and end, and then have, say, return missing or none, or none or something outside of your domain. So we cannot do it right now, but we'll try to incorporate that.
All right. So what is the best hack we can do right now? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, one hack that we discussed last time, but I'm not sure if we finished the discussion about that, was just take the polygon for 1908 and have another copy of it in 1910 or whenever the actual end date is, right? So if you ever query anything between 1908 and 1910, they'll get the correct polygon and it will end at the correct date and everything. The only problem is that if you ask for all the list of values, the last one will appear twice, but I don't think that's that big a deal.
But why would you put it at the
No. You understand, Gosha? You've got to be able to get, if you query between 1908 and 1914, it's got to give that last polygon. But outside, if you query for 1915, it's got to say missing.
Right, but it means that at the end of the what you have, that the last date would be the missing. So you add the value. I think this is the hack that you're
yes,
doing here, right? It's adding the missing value.
No,
there are two hacks we've discussed. One hack is adding missing open close at 1914, right? So that way, when you query any time before 1914, it'll work. But if you query 1914 itself, it'll say missing.
Yes.
The other hack is to instead of doing missing, just do whatever the last polygon you know of was, which has the same effect, except when you ask for 1914 exactly, it'll give you a polygon.
Well, I mean, the 1914, 1915. I mean, the question of the two possibilities are, when you look at the list of polygons, you can either have a reduplication at the end, or you can have a missing tail. Actually, I think the missing tail might be better than the reduplicated tail.
I think it would work better logically, at least for me, if you put the missing on the first kind of date that you know that it's applicable, because up to that date, everything queried before should hold the value from the
right.
From
okay,
the
so missing. Look, maybe if it said missing, country stopped existing or something instead of not available, then it would seem to me to make decent sense. Missing, what would we say?
It shouldn't be country not existing, because there are things like Roman Republic, Roman Empire.
Yeah, right. What can we say? But not if we made it something that actually speaks to what happened to the data, rather than just generically saying not available, I think the solution is fine. So what could it say?
Right. The only thing, the context I think in which you'll see this is when you have the time series and you say bracket values or something.
Exactly.
So it shouldn't be confusing,
Well, but if it says that date and then it says missing, what could it say? Geographic entity discontinued, missing discontinued. What's a good word for discontinued? That
is this one of the end of something? End of string, end of file, end of data?
Yeah, it's something like that. But
yeah, the only problem, as was said before, is that when you map over the values, etc., you will also map over this missing value, right? So that's maybe
true.
The only...
That's life. Look.
Well,
guys,
but it's unfortunate because if you say geo area, that's right. That was the issue. Is if you do the time series map of geo area over it, the last one will freak out, and if it doesn't freak out, it'll return missing. Even if you handle it correctly, you're going to make it return missing there, which is wrong, because you do actually know what the area was, at least 2 hours earlier, if you know what I mean.
That's why another possibility would be to have an empty polygon, and then it returns 0.
But I think that's wrong too, because if you do the Roman Republic thing, it shouldn't say that area goes down to 0 at the end. I think it should just say that the I don't know what end date they have in 44 BC or something. That it should say the area is whatever it is. It shouldn't drop to 0 for just a moment.
Okay, listen, guys, we are dealing with a hack here. Hopefully soon, time series will have be better, stronger, and will not need us to do a hack. So we've got two possible hacks. We've got the reduplication hack, or we've got the missing tail hack. Okay? To me, the missing tail hack seems better right now. It seems a little bit more honest than the other one. And I think with a, so then all we need here is, entity doesn't exist anymore. Basically, is what it needs to say, right? Entity missing. What would be the missing non-existent? What's a good word for that?
Also, we should consider the fact that there are cases where this missing might happen in the middle of the entity.
Well,
So
then say not available. Then say not available for those missings. This is a very specific missing. This missing denotes this entity doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. Well, okay.
What do we say when you use dated of Roman Republic, 1920? Does it just say missing not available? Because that's effectively what this is.
Not applicable. Not applicable. I think in a few cases we have.
Okay, but so okay, guys. Here's an issue. Let's say there's a country, and it was occupied for some period of time, and then it came back again. What does our time series look like in that case?
So at least for the. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to give you an example of such country where you can see. I don't know what happens, but.
Go ahead, tell us.
Poland.
Okay. All right, let's look during the Soviet period.
I think, yeah, you can look at it. I think what it does is they just have a pre-war Poland, then occupied.
Well, no,
Poland
we're talking.
Earlier, 1700 to 1930 or something.
Okay, well,
the partition. Yeah,
the partition. Oh.
Okay, tell me what to type, guys. What should I type? Dated.
I think
of Poland.
Mm-hmm.
Comma all.
Oh, you need a polygon as well somewhere.
Oh yeah.
And you need historical country.
Knowledge
Poland.
base failed with error code 503. Guys, is current down? Can somebody look, please? Is current down? No, apparently not. Well, who knows? Okay, so you're saying this thing dated...
That is the country data entity.
That's not the historical country Poland.
How do I get the historical country?
It would be entity historical country.
No, okay, but I need an answer that's better than that, because we need to be able to actually give users a way to get to that, right? How are users supposed to get to that? Do you understand?
Usually it does have it usually does have an under that menu a historical country thing. I would check that there is in fact a Poland historical country that's called Poland.
Yeah, probably there isn't. It doesn't auto-complete.
It might be like Kingdom of Poland or something like that. Duchy of
Commonwealth.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Poland is
It'll be
divided into several entities.
Yep, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is the historic country.
So does that? So what is that one that will be absorbed and then reappear again, or not?
Yes.
Okay.
But this will just have an end date, which is the partition, and then it will disappear. This entity will disappear forever, and then it will reappear as a new thing called Poland. And there used to be a way,
Yes.
I don't know what it's called. There used to be a property where it gave you something like, it would say Polish, and then you could look at all the ones that were Polish.
Okay, well, guys, several points. First of all, in the entity structure, we should surely have forward and back pointers. So the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth should have something, a property that says, successor entities or something. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, although that's a deeply fraught issue. I mean, here it's pretty obvious from the name, you know, it's going to point to Poland and Lithuania, but there are other cases where that's a very deeply fraught thing.
No, I understand that, but I mean, at least, I don't know, you know, right. And you have to, it's somewhat arbitrary because it's like in the case of, you know, the Roman Empire or something, you know, what does it, when it fragments to lots of things. But I mean, we do know what was on that land, on that territory, the day after it disappeared, that entity disappeared.
But I mean, even something like what is the, you know, what is the successor of the Soviet Union? Is it just Russia, or is it Russia and every other ex-Soviet state? And, you know, does it include
no,
Estonia,
I think it includes,
et cetera?
I think it includes Estonia. I think it includes anything whose territory was encompassed by the predecessor entity.
This is a concept like neighboring countries, but it's neighboring in space-time.
That's correct.
But then you also have weird things. Maybe this is correct, but for example, during the Polish partition, I mean, basically, you know, what was it? 3 other countries basically just absorbed Poland. So would they all then be successors of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth?
Yes, I would think so. If
but
those
then you
countries
wouldn't be able to get the thing you want. If what you want is you want all of the Polands, you wouldn't get that. You would say, what are the successors of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth? And it would tell you, I don't even remember what it is, but it's like Prussia, Russia, and something else.
Austro-Hungarian Empire.
There you go. Right.
Okay, but
and then if you ask for the successors of those, you would not get. I mean, you get millions of things.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because one notion of successor is anything whose territory overlaps the territory of the predecessor. That's one definition. I agree. This is a fraught thing. Yeah. Okay, but what were we looking at here? We were looking at countries that, what happens to the time series for countries that disappear, that reappear again?
Right, but I think it's a very simple answer, which we've already seen by looking at the structure of the entities, which is that the time series just ends when the country disappears, and there's a quote unquote new country that shows up when the country reappears. So there's no discontinuity in any time series.
Hold on. What happened? I mean, again, I don't know my history well enough, but you know, during the Second World War, for example, when France was or Belgium was occupied, right? It isn't a different Belgium before the Second World War and after the Second World War, is it?
I think it is. Here it is. It'll be like Kingdom of Belgium before and then Belgium afterward or something like that.
Is that really right? I mean,
and there's even stuff like for France, we have like Vichy France and stuff like that,
Yeah,
which
I
of
know
course
that.
its own
I know.
borders. And
Yeah, right. But is that really right? I mean, okay.
But Norway was occupied and didn't change. You know, it was kingdom before and then after the Second World War II, War.
Okay, so let's look at Norway. Let's look at what we do for Norway.
It
Okay, how do we
didn't
find
change
out?
the structure?
so if you just want to get around these interpretation things, you can just do interpreter of historical country. If all you want is yeah.
Whatever. I mean, I'm confused. I'm confused. I mean, we got to do better than this.
That's what it's called currently.
Yeah, but so what happens if I say dated of polygon, comma, 1942? I'm going to guess it was occupied, was it?
Yes.
Fascinating. Okay, so now if I go back and I say 1935, oh, come on, what's going on?
Check if any of the dateds work. And also, don't you need a list around the date? Otherwise, it interprets as an absolute time.
You're looking at a regular country
data
entity, right?
Yeah.
We don't have time series in country data, just in historical country.
But then we don't. What is the historical country of Norway called?
There's one called Denmark, Norway. There's a couple called Kingdom of Norway. There's Medieval Kingdom of Norway. There's one just called Norway.
But then why is the one that's just called Norway not showing up as an alternate in the linguistics of Norway?
Because I don't think we have added spellings for the countries in historical country data that are equivalent to the modern day countries, because we haven't wanted to have those clashes in the past. It doesn't mean we can't add those.
Okay, so hold on a second. So, I mean, isn't this something a little bit like the hierarchical entity business? That Norway is the instantaneous current Norway, that it has sort of a parent thing, maybe, that is the historical sequence of Norway.
I don't know if that's a hierarchical relationship.
Okay, so what should we do with this? Somebody's sending a message here. People should.
No, it's just the list of all the Norway entities.
What's all this junk? This is a mess, guys. Sorry. I mean, history is a mess, as we know, but all right, so let's go back through this again. So first point is, I want to know the borders of Norway in 1925. How do I get that information? Is there a linguistic way to get it? What do I do here? I mean, again, some of these, like, I mean, did we specially rename? I mean, that Kingdom of Norway 1814 : whatever. What is that? How many of those weird things like that are there?
That double colon random junk thing is a convention that we've been adding to a lot more domains because we need to have distinct standard names for things that often have the same names, right?
Yeah, but where is the Kingdom of Norway 872 whatever it is?
Well, that number, I have no idea what that is. Somebody in the Borsa team would have to say.
Maybe you should make the actual entity. Sorry, go ahead.
Is the years in which the kingdom existed. 872 and 1397.
So maybe you should say entity. You should make the actual entity objects out of these so that we can see their common names, because the canonical names honestly don't matter.
Yeah. That's a big fail, guys. First of all, how did you manage to have the of capitalized? That's a fail. This is pretty bad.
Those ones with the double colon things are because they apparently don't have a name property populated either. Ben and I were looking at this after the last meeting. There's missing names and name cleanup that needs to be done, and I'm not sure when some of these things have been added that weren't cleaned up.
This is a big mess, right? We've got Denmark, Norway, we've got Sweden and Norway. I mean, if it says, okay, we've clearly got to do better curation on these names. These are pretty horrible. And I mean, if we're really going to have different entities for every disjoint sequence of dates, the way we should probably do that is to say Norway, paren, 872 to 1397. You see what I'm saying? In the common name.
I think there are some that are like that.
Okay, well, so this may just be bad curation here.
Could use the sublabel property like we've done in some other domains that would put a gray
that's what I
meant with the date ranges in there.
That's exactly
that would be something we could programmatically populate that property, and then it would format all the yellow boxes that way.
Okay. But now Kingdom of Norway, right? Is it not still the Kingdom of Norway? In other words, why is it called Kingdom of Norway back in the 1814 period, but now it's just called Norway? You see what I'm saying? I mean, did somebody add Kingdom of just as a way to disambiguate that period of Norway's history? Because that would be silly.
So this is, I mean, for better or worse, this is, by the way, a convention I think Wikipedia does too, where like if you look up Norway, its page will just be called Norway, But if you look up some historical thing, it might say Kingdom of Norway, or yeah, this is something that they do with some regularity.
I think it's a bit of a hack.
Maybe a
Part of the thing is,
political.
I think names are kind of ill-defined historically.
I think this may be a political thing in the sense of emphasizing the fact that the previous entity was constructed around a king, while now the king is just
I think there is still a king, actually.
There is a king, but doesn't have as much power as the king had before.
I see.
It may have something to do with the formal way that the country is known internationally and in United Nations. So
yeah, but there
it
wasn't
might have a
a
structure like the democratic monarchy, but it's known as Norway.
Right.
I mean, for example, in Spain we do have a king now, but speaking of the kingdom could be considered politically incorrect.
But yet, the UK, by its very name, is the United Kingdom.
Yes.
I mean, this is obviously a horrifying can of worms. Question is, what can we do that will actually be useful? Right? And I mean, clearly, I think these modifiers like Kingdom of, and certainly medieval Kingdom of Norway. Boy, what do we do?
I mean, at least that
like
one, I understand what it means. I mean, that one is actually, I mean, even if it's a little awkward, it's I know what it's talking about.
That is a post hoc.
All of these are fairly post hoc. Like a lot of these, I mean, the idea of countries having well-defined names and stuff like that is extremely modern.
But wait a minute, on maps that Ptolemy and people made, they had names of areas, didn't they? I mean, they had names of cities.
Not like this. I mean, they'd have names of cities, sure. But I mean, like even like Rome, calling it Roman Republic and Roman Empire is very modern. I mean, if we were being historical, maybe we'd write like SPQR or something, but we're obviously not going to do that.
Right. Well, yeah, but okay. Humph.
And to give another example of where it gets complicated, something like one of these Sweden and Norway, or union between Sweden and Norway, that's because there were things where the king of Sweden was also the king of Norway. So maybe you have them as two countries, maybe you have them as one, depending on how in charge the king of Sweden actually is of Norway, and it's like, right. And there isn't necessarily a name for that union other than just the guy who is the king of both.
Yes. Did that happen? I don't know my British history. Like William of Orange, wasn't he somehow the king of somehow the Netherlands, but nevertheless those were considered as two separate countries. Maybe it was just one family. I don't really know. I don't know the history well enough. Okay, what are we going to do? All right, so okay, first point is we have what we might call history book names for things. So first point is our convention that we are using the history book name for a country? Seems like that's our convention. So that means Petty Norway, whatever that is, should be called Petty Norway in its standard name, not just Norway. Am I making sense?
You mean in its display name?
Yes. Yeah, so it's common name.
Yeah.
Right. And arguably, it will be helpful to people to put these gray subcomments for all of the Norway-like entities. I mean, maybe we should do that for every historical country to give it span, because that will disambiguate it. For many of these things where the name is somewhat arbitrary, like Kingdom of Norway versus Medieval Kingdom of Norway, to give, it's not a lot of space to give the parenthetical with the dates, but that seems like it's useful. What do people think of that?
I think that might make some sense.
But look at the standard names of the last two things here, Sweden, Norway, and Union Sweden, Norway. I mean, that's just horrifying. again, look, and then we've got at the beginning there, we've got Denmark, Norway. So let's make up our mind. If we're going to, if there is, unless there is a, okay, what
But
do we do?
There may be history book reasons for that. Like, oh, before they were just two kingdoms under one king, but then later they actually merged their administrations. And so, now you change their name. I think putting dates, though, would make a lot of those problems less important because even if the names sound similar, you can just immediately see, oh, yes, of course, this is the Sweden and Norway from before the great merger of blah, blah, blah.
Right. Fine. And okay, I think in general, in the curation of these names, that, things that are really written out with a lot of words like union, between, I think we should try to avoid that, as we have in most other things. And go for Sweden, Norway, rather than Sweden and Norway, if that's correct, right? Alan, that's kind of for you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at some stuff on my screen too. Yeah, yes, I think you're right.
Can we get a list? Let's just do this. Let's just see how horrifying it is. Oh, a lot of them. Okay, we got all kinds of crazy stuff here. West Pakistan, K5W7W. Why the heck? I mean, I understand what that was, but why does it have to have an identifier? There was only one.
Nope, it shouldn't. It shouldn't have an identifier here. If that's showing up, it's because the entity framework is using the standard name by default. It's because somebody hasn't populated the name property of that entity.
So this is a mess. Happen. So we need. Okay, so we've got things like xi paren state. That's obviously ridiculous. Right? This is badly curated. So West Florida, was that a thing? Was West Florida a thing?
Very briefly.
Huh.
I think it was like one fort.
During what? During the Revolutionary War or what? Okay.
I think a bit later, but yeah.
Okay, so somehow we've got Yan coming up twice. This is a mess, guys. This is a mess. We need to clean this up. Okay, but then we kind of know what we're going to do here. It's going to be basically civilized names that are shortened. You see, look, we don't want to do this. County, Paren, Duchy of Berg. Make up your mind. Let's plan for no parens. Okay. And I'm suspicious about
in parens.
Yeah, right. The Ankara government, I'm suspicious about that. I'm suspicious that was just Ankara. I mean, in other words, the question is, okay, so here's a question. Like you say, Bhopal state, right? Is that really right, or should it just have been Bhopal here? Get what I'm saying? I mean, my gosh, there was a thing called the Banana Republic as opposed to the Banana Republic.
There is a Wikipedia page for a thing called the Bhopal state, and it's called Bhopal state for what it's worth.
Yeah, but I wouldn't consider that necessarily right either.
No, sure.
But I mean, so okay, the question is, we've got the Anurudap, whatever it was, some looks Asian at least, kingdom, and we've got Andorra, which has probably been a kingdom at some point. But so I mean, the question of whether we call something, yeah, I think it just has to be whatever the historical convention is, that we call it, like we're not going to call it United Kingdom. We're not going to cut off the kingdom part because it's just part of its name. Oh God, I'm really upset that this curation is so bad. Well, okay, but we'll get this fixed. All right, what do we, okay, so I think we have a sort of a plan here. The issue is, in terms of the linguistics, I think we probably should, if you type Norway, probably one of the choices should be, should be historical country. And then we could have multiple Norways listed there by their dates, which would include the Kingdom of Norway, the medieval Kingdom of Norway, etc. Alan, what do you think?
I think it's not a bad idea. I think we've talked about it before and shied away from that, but that's a thing that will require some. It's going to require more curation.
Yeah.
Which things actually deserve to get Norway added to their
I understand.
spellings that we
like
actually
for
want to crash
example,
on, right?
For example, does Sweden, does Denmark, Norway, is that, somebody has to really look at that. Is that something that is reasonably thought of? I mean, because if you say, if you say Lithuania, should you get the Polish-Lithuanian Union thing that we just saw up here, Commonwealth? What do you think? I mean,
yes, please.
Is that how,
Very strong opinion? Yeah, I see.
we really would like to have a good relationships with our neighbor Lithuania. Yes. And they were a big part of the Commonwealth, so I think both,
no, but the question is, it could be the case that if you just say Lithuania, right, that in the spellings, you simply don't get the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth because that is considered a different thing. See what I'm saying? As opposed to, it's not a thing, it could have been the Kingdom of Lithuania, the Duchy of Lithuania, the whatever of Lithuania, and those are all Lithuania and considered Lithuania. Whereas this thing, I mean, like for example, if you say Poland, I don't think you want to get Prussia. Because it's really, you'd name it differently. If you wanted Prussia, you would have asked for Prussia, I would think. Am I wrong? I mean, I don't know that part of the world well enough. But I don't think, I don't think you would consider Prussia to be a dated aspect of Poland, right?
No, but I would say that Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, it says that you have, Lithuanian part of that and Polish part of that. So I know where you're going because you're going on a space continuum, and I'm going on a more political, logical continuum here.
Well, there's also the naming continuum, because there's also things like, for example, if you put Russia, should you also get USSR? Presumably, probably not. So maybe the important thing is when you say Poland, the actual phrasing is ambiguous, whether you mean Poland, Lithuania, or modern Poland.
Actually, look, Russia back in the 1970s, for example, if somebody said Russia, they would have meant that would have been a name that they could have used for the Soviet Union.
Right, but now if someone says Russia, they pretty clearly don't mean the Soviet Union, because if they wanted to say Soviet Union, they would have just said it, or Soviet Russia or something like that.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that today, were you to be referring to the historical thing, you would not call it Russia. I don't know about that. I mean, then there are really horrifying ones. Like, for example, people will routinely, well, maybe only people from some part of the country, but will routinely refer to England when they mean the United Kingdom.
Right. I think the thing to do is to just do it by whether the name is ambiguous, right? If someone types Poland, they might actually mean Poland, Lithuania, or modern Poland or whatever. But if someone types, well,
actually, I don't think you know that. I mean, Gosha might know that, but I don't think without knowing something about the locale, so to speak, I don't think we know that. I mean, it could have been like if somebody said Ottoman Empire and then they said Turkey, those are.
But see, those are, you can tell, it's not just my point is that I think if you try and do it politically by saying, well, is Turkey really a successor of the Ottoman Empire? Then that's when you're in trouble, right? But I think the thing is, in that case, you would just say, well, did they type Ottoman or did they type Turkey? Because those names, just the names, just as strings, are clearly different.
Yeah.
And so it's you can tell the difference, unlike the Poland-Lithuania case.
Right. And I suppose on Gaul versus France, clearly different. But if you go to France and you say the French Republic, the French Revolutionary Republic, the whatever, those will not be distinguished. Those, if you type France, those should be disambiguations for that. But Gaul, okay, should Gaul be a disambiguation for France?
No, especially because I doubt there is a Gaul in here because there wasn't really a unified one.
Okay. Famously, it was divided into 3 parts. Did they have names? I don't know.
Right, but there are things like in France, you bring up France, but it's a particularly complicated one because again, there's like France is on like the 5th Republic or something like that. And they refer to themselves occasionally as the 5th Republic. And I think we do have entities for previous republics, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's
Yes.
fine. But so if you say France, it should just have a list of the various republics with their dates.
Yeah.
My suggestion, by the way, in the disambiguation sequence would be that we give the historical countries and we sort them from most recent to least recent. Right, in the disambiguation menu.
Yeah, that would be, I think that would be relatively easy to programmatically score those.
Right. Okay. But so what are we concluding here? What we're concluding is this needs a curation pass. The good news is it's only 3,200 entities. And we just got to come up with reasonable names for everything. And we've got to come up with the question of whether that thing, like for example, the Ahorn Kingdom, I don't know what it is, but well, it's a bad example because I haven't a clue what it is. Antarctica, okay. On autonomous province of Western Bosnia. Oh my gosh, what do we do with that? You say Bosnia. Does that come up in the disambiguation? If that had been most of Bosnia, it should surely come up in the disambiguation. But if it was a splinter piece of Bosnia, what should happen?
I think the disambiguation should be fairly liberal and just include everything that's plausible.
Okay, fine.
It's fine if it has 10 things, as it will if you put in something like France.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying that even if, like, Vichy France or whatever else will show up, well, that one's an easy one. But even, okay, so question is, if it was a tiny splinter thing, I don't know, the self-proclaimed, not quite sea land, but some other, there are plenty of parts of the world where this happens far too much. Of some small region will claim itself independent, and for a year it will survive as independent, and then it will be reabsorbed. I don't think it's too embarrassing to include that in the primary country. And it's just
right. I think that's fine, but I think that the criteria should be the name, right? I mean, maybe this Western Autonomous Region of Bosnia or whatever it's called, should maybe it mostly was actually in modern Montenegro, but I think we should still only disambiguate it for Bosnia because that's the thing that's in the name.
Fair point.
I will give you counter example. Warsaw Duchy.
You think Warsaw Duchy should show up for Poland?
Yep. It was a little blip when Napoleon was coming and, liberated part of Poland, and then he went to and had a bad time at Moscow. So everything disappeared. But yeah, the names are, the problem with just following the naming convention is that you're gonna lose these blips like that, it had completely different name, but might have political significance.
Right, but the question is, if someone puts in Poland and we're trying to disambiguate it, are we trying to find all the things that were quote unquote Polish, or are we trying to only find the things that, assuming that they know the names of different things, what could they be referring to? Because
right, but maybe but maybe we can have just a binary disambiguation in the way that Poland. Do you mean the current or a historic entity? And then from if somebody wants a historic entity, then you can direct to the slew of possibilities.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have that initial branch for sure. But the issue is how far afield, because if somebody said, I don't know. I don't know history well enough, but I mean, in what you're saying is basically, look, it seems to me there are two criteria. Either its name, maybe we do it union of two things. It's either it's got a name like the Western Autonomous Region of Bosnia, or it is the significant geographic area. Or it has a significant overlap of geographic area. In other words, I don't think, okay, so this is a good question. If you say Estonia, should you get Soviet Union for some part of Estonia? And I think the answer is no. And I think the criterion, the reason for that is there's two possibilities. Either if it was the if it was the Duchy of Estonia or something for some period of time, then great, you get that. And or if there was a thing whose borders were decently agreeing with Estonia, but it was called Squiggleroo instead, you get that.
So if you had modern Italy, should you also include the Roman Republic because for 5 minutes it had similar borders?
Okay, Stephen, question back at you. If I say England, should I say United Kingdom or Great Britain?
Wait a minute, which we have an entity right now called United Kingdom.
Well, yeah, but you say so. So the point is that Estonia was in the Union of Soviet Republic, right?
Yes.
So England is in the United Kingdom, right?
Well, but so
if you disambiguate England, should you only go for the English, or can you go also for the unions that England is part of? Because if from England you show United Kingdom, then from Estonia, in a historic countries you would show Soviet Union.
Look, England. Okay, I'm sure that we do. What do we do here?
I think if you do England, there's probably it'll probably return UK. But
yeah.
No, it isn't.
Oh.
It's the administrative division.
Okay.
Okay, used as a country.
They're historical. Okay, there you go. But I think there are historical countries called England. And
there are
different variants of England.
Yes, I'm sure. Right, and I'm sure when Ms. Boadicea was in charge, it had, it wasn't. I guess it wasn't that big a country then, but let's see. I mean, okay, what should happen here? So, by the way, England probably during the Civil War, did it change its name? Maybe it didn't have a well-defined name. Because certainly if it was a kingdom before, it wasn't a kingdom for a brief period of time. Okay,
right. This is the sort of thing though, where it probably was amorphous what its name was. The idea that it had a well-defined name that was publicized everywhere is ahistorical, probably.
Yeah, I mean, but it probably had a flag, which
that's also a very modern thing that everyone's expected to have one flag. Yeah.
But didn't they have when they were like when they were like the standards in battles and things, didn't they have to have something? Otherwise, didn't know.
Yeah, but they were often not very flag-like and not what you associate with like the idea of like countries having well-defined names, borders, and flags is like, only became really solidified in like the 1800s.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we going to do here? This is, I mean, so. Okay, so I think Alan has to get somebody to do a curation pass on this and figure out what some of the horrifying issues are. I think we've got, Gosha was raising the question of if something, look, the basic point, you might be right. If something was incorporated into, let's say, the Soviet Union, why not list it in the historical country list? It's useful because, in fact, it's useful in the following way. You say, I really want to know about Estonia in 1983. Why can't I find that? Are these people just, are they, did they just mess up the curation? Well, the reason you can't find it is that the country didn't exist in 1983. So it would be better for us to list the stack of things with contiguous dates that just says, Soviet Union 1945 or whatever it was to 1989 or whatever. for Estonia. Does that make sense to people? I mean, that seems more useful.
And
now, having said that, what is the programmatic way? I mean, I could do it by just saying, interpreter. By the way, I assume we have start and end dates for every historical country. I assume that that's a property, date interval or something. We certainly have, we have
start date and end date are properties.
Okay.
I don't think they're guaranteed to be defined, but they are properties.
How could they not be defined? Well, I mean, we certainly won't have polygons.
Well, I found one that I don't even know what it is, called Abbey of St. Peter in the Black Forest, which has basically nothing defined, but I don't even know what it is.
There's probably somebody running the abbey said we're declaring independence.
Well, I looked it up and all I could find was the building, and it was a monastery or something. Sorry, go ahead, whoever was.
Well, do we have Sealand? Talking of historical
we've
countries.
talked about Sealand in the past, but I don't think we've ever decided where that would belong.
Well, if it was anything, it would be a historical country. But what is confusing about Sealand is it has no polygons.
Well, no, I mean, there are tons of things like this, but this is not. It's not recognized. No one. I don't think anyone really ever recognized Sealand, just as no one ever recognized one of 50 other micronations.
But Sealand has
things.
But Sealand has another awkward point, which is every other country has a border that is part of a continent, does it not? In other words, when we give the borders of a country, we're not giving them out into the ocean.
It's like Kiribati or something. Island nations.
Yeah, I understand. So what do we do there? What do we do for the polygon? The polygon is the land of Kiribati, isn't it?
I assume. I think so.
Currently it is, but we have discussed having the maritime borders. It will be very useful because sometimes people do a query about a point which is just in the mouth of a river, something like that, and we say false, just because it's in the water, and we shouldn't.
Yes. Right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, but if we have maritime borders, that includes, where they own the fish type thing, presumably.
And when the flight embargo is imposed.
Over the over those borders.
Because you have the international waters versus, territorial waters.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think that there are many more disputes about that because, you can, if it's on the land, people notice because somebody's got their house and it's in country X or country Y. If it's in the ocean, you can get away with a lot more fuzziness about who owns that, who whether it's territorial waters or not. I don't know how much.
I mean, there's supposed to be an equation for it basically, but in fact it doesn't follow it in lots of places. But I mean, it's the same thing as on land. I mean, there are territorial disputes and in the water as well as on land.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, okay, all right. We should probably wrap up this meeting, unfortunately, but I think we have made progress on this issue and on the time series issue. The other big issue that we had here was what? What was the other big thing that we were trying to discuss here? So I think the time series, we got a resolution. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we wanted to discuss how do we treat the historical countries, either by putting new functions for like temporal entities or just include them in the geo functions. That's a discussion
we started
last
time.
Yes.
Last time we discussed the whole space-time story of these countries.
Yes, we ended up with that, yes. That's a third option.
We're not going to get away with anything significantly different from that. I mean, we may be able to, we should take that as the kind of ground truth, and then we should decide what projections of it we want to have, is my point of view. So in other words, and I think Francisco had made this nice graphic of the space-time structure of the Roman Empire. But, and obviously we don't have the full space-time envelope because we only have it at discrete time points. Here's a question for Gosha. In the time series redesign, what are you going to do with geometric time series.
You mean with polygons?
Yeah,
and
time
such?
series of polygons.
Well, then by default, they will have the hold value from the left in the relation in a way.
But you don't have any other plan for that. Like, is there something that the region functionality with all of our region reconstruction, surface reconstruction stuff could do? Not necessarily for the country case, but I'm just trying to understand what's out there. Because what's going to happen is, given that we have the thing that has, piecewise linear, piecewise constant polygons, then we're going to have all of the stuff about the intersection of this space-time region with that one. Oh boy. Johan, did you crystallize this beyond what we talked about last time? Is this more crystallized to something which we can talk about, or is this still in the same state it was before?
No, this is more or less the same. We didn't finish discussing this. It didn't make sense to move forward.
Okay. All right, fine. Well, I think we're going to have to
have another meeting, perhaps.
Yep, I think we have to have another meeting.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think basically what you're right. I mean,
do you want us to explore anything else in the meantime?
No, but this curation needs to get done. And I think this curation may help us understand. I mean, the basic question here was, let's see, for a given point. Okay, there's some well-defined things like, for this point, give me the time series of what countries it's been in. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
That seems well-defined. And then what's this stuff again here? What was this geo group doing again?
It's a collection of all the polygons for the entity without dates.
So that's like the union region. Yeah.
Right, it's just a bad name, I think. I mean, it's a perfectly fine concept. It's just like all the polygons we have. I mean, it could just be called historical polygons.
Well, no, but it comes back. Oh, no, sorry, it doesn't come back. I thought the idea was that it would come back as a GeoGroup object, though. So you could run geo area on it and stuff like that.
Oh, I see, I see.
I see it doesn't right now.
No, but it does here. Look, it does here.
No, because you said GeoGroup around it. That was one of the things we talked about last time, was the fact it was called GeoGroup because it had an analogy to GeoGroup, but it didn't actually return one.
Well, that makes sense. I didn't know we had a thing called GeoGroup. What is GeoGroup?
It's the analogy of graphics group for the geo context.
But I think the idea is that if you said something like geo area of that, I think it would give you the right area, as opposed to a list of areas or something like that, if geo area is even listable.
Yeah, let's see if this thing.
Although it's if the polygons overlap, it's a non-trivial calculation, so I honestly don't know how that works.
Well, I mean, let's see if the geo area of this, okay, and if I take
now
that,
make sure it's not the sum, because the sum, that would be the wrong answer.
Wrong answer. I think that's the wrong answer. Jose, what do you think? I think it's the wrong answer. I think geo group should correctly sort of, should just be a single covering, so to speak, of every point.
Let's say that in the geo context, we typically assume the polygons do not overlap, that you have already prepared things. Because if we have to stop at every moment to intersect potentially thousands of polygons, it could be complicated.
Okay, but then this GeoGroup property just doesn't make sense.
Right. Well, maybe the thing to do is, I mean, right now we don't have good ways of doing, for example, unions of geopolygons. If we did, wouldn't the right thing to do just to return a single geopolygon that is the union?
Right. Yes. So that's a separate operation. So,
Yeah,
so
but
I
would we
mean,
pre-compute that?
the Diageo group was more like the graphics group. The fact that you put this there and then you cannot select individual parts and things like that. It's more like a graphical thing, but we have used it for other reasons.
Right. So
Okay.
Geo group could continue to do this, but the Geo variant that we saw in the other notebook, presumably should, maybe for now it can return, maybe you'd call it something like union region or something like that, or union area, or sure. But initially maybe it would return the Geo group, and then once we can actually compute the unions, or maybe we can compute the unions, ourselves right now, then we can do that.
Right. Okay, we should wrap this up for now. Next time, I mean, if you guys had a chance to think some more about this, it will be good. Right. I mean, you're basically saying, okay, let me just summarize a couple of things here. I mean, you're basically saying for every historical country, there's a maximum expansion, there's the geo union, right? Those are two things. Geo group is just not going to make it as a name. And we should just consider the maximum expansion is itself a polygon. It has properties, right? Maximum expansion. What is that? I mean, okay, it's got a polygon, it's probably got a population, it might even have a date of maximum expansion, as opposed to the union region, which is, the thing projected in the space-time blob. It's just looking in the space direction and just unioning it in the time direction. As opposed to maximum expansion, which is looking at the maximum area point in space-time. If I understand correctly. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, what's this case here? What does that mean?
Dated polygon is the time series of polygons, the space-time thing.
Oh boy, so geo within Q is then looking at the question of whether these were disjoint as space-time snakes, so to speak. But then does it, okay, but for example, if it was Gaul and France, or the Gallic Empire and France, okay, those are disjoint in time, but not disjoint in space. So I think what we need is a geo within Q that is a space-time geo within Q, right? Which is, because both of those are relevant. I mean, we can both ask,
and that's why we arise with a temporal functions, so to treat separately the geographic part and the temporal part.
Yes, well, which we're going to need to do, but maybe those just turn into time series, and then we have a reasonable set of time series comparison functions. All right, time to go for now. I think we have a good place to start next time, and maybe you could try to, we've already figured out a certain amount here. We could try and clean this up a bit based on what we've already figured out. By the way, this business about dated not taking a naked integer, I really think we should just fix that. It's just silly.
Well, but everywhere, if you give it a date spec and it's an integer, it assumes it's an absolute time.
Yes, but I think dated should be different. I think it can be and it should be, because I get this wrong every single time. It's just kind of stupid. Dated most of the time is just a year. 1700 seconds after whatever it is, 1970 or something, is just not what you want. And while a
Well, I mean,
date
the case
object,
would be the case would not be typing it. The case would be if you did it programmatically. I mean, it's the same with data object, where data object of 1900 looks very natural, but it can't work.
no, I understand that, but dated doesn't have to follow exactly the same conventions as date object.
Although I think every date function follows that convention right now.
I know, but I'm saying dated could be different because it is used so often for these entity things that are year granularity type things. I mean, look, dated could have, the way we could do it is, now that we have a date granularity option, we could have a default date granularity option here that somehow, I don't know, but that doesn't quite work.
But there are cases though, like for example, if you're dealing with time series, that there's a way of getting out the list of data objects. There's also a way of getting out the list of absolute times, and then you can programmatically use those in all sorts of places. But if they worked everywhere to get the absolute times except for with dated in the entity framework, I think that would be weird.
Further discussion required. Okay, to be continued. See you all soon. Bye for now.